Hey guys, this is Eric Megatech PC here with another computer building video, and today I'm going to be doing an installation guide for EK's FC Titan. This is their brand new full cover water block for Nvidia's flagship GeForce GTX Titan video card that they just released. As far as I know, EK is first to market with water blocks for the Titan. This is the first block that is available commercially. And I picked up a couple of these, as you can see, in the nickel plexi finish to install on my Titans for my upcoming build that I'm going to be doing a series of videos on. Now, in my last installation guide for the AMD 7970s, I also installed nickel plexi EK blocks, and I mentioned their issues with the nickel plating process that was supposed to have been resolved with their new EN, or electroless nickel plating process. And I'm happy to report that after having torn down my loop yesterday and examining those blocks thoroughly, there is no apparent corrosion anywhere on the nickel plating that I can see. I've been running Mayhem's pastel grape red coolant for nearly a year now, and there's no corrosion and no staining. So at least in my experience, it looks to me as though EK's new electroless nickel plating process has solved the issue, at least, like I said, in my experience. But I had no hesitation in ordering their nickel plexi blocks for the Titans, and seeing as how they are the first to market with these blocks, it was a pretty easy decision to make. And you'll see when I unbox this card, it is a very gorgeous water block, and I would expect no less from EK. Don't be surprised by the CSQ look on the box. This is the first card that I've seen from them that doesn't have the CSQ design motif since they started that back over the summer. So I think that enough people have complained now to where they've decided to sort of move away from this design, although it was actually starting to grow on me a little bit. But I am glad that it's not on these Titan blocks. Anyway, as far as this video goes, we're going to be taking this block out, checking out all the accessories, and then doing a very thorough step-by-step guide on installing it onto this EVGA Superclock Titan. I have to apologize in advance. This video is going to be rather long. I like to do these installation guides very thoroughly so that if you're a beginner or somebody who's never even installed a water block onto a video card, that you can hopefully watch this video from start to finish and be able to go through the entire process with no issues, so that when you get to the end, you will hopefully have something that looks a little bit like this. This is obviously my other Titan that I've already installed the water block on, and it was a fairly smooth process. So hopefully this video will help you guys out. I believe, I checked on YouTube, I think this is going to be the very first water block installation guide on YouTube. So, you know, I know there's a lot of guys with Titans out there, and there's a lot of guys getting blocks in, and if you have any issues or any questions, you know, check this video out, and hopefully it'll answer all of your questions. I think that's it. We're going to open this block up and move on to the next step. Stay tuned. Alright guys, so here we are. We're ready to get started on our installation of the EKFC Titan onto the EVGA GeForce GTX Titan video card. And real quick, I'm going to go over all of the hardware and tools that you're going to need to complete this installation. Starting with my handy scissors that I have here. You're going to use these, of course, to cut the thermal pads that are provided for you in the Titan water block. I've got a screwdriver here that I use. This is a mini flathead screwdriver that I use mostly for peeling the foil off of the thermal pads. It's like a very tiny head on it there, so that comes in handy for that. Also, I've got this nice little kit here, and I highly recommend, if you are doing any kind of work on computers, that you have a kit something similar to this. This is basically just a screwdriver kit that has all the different bits that you're gonna possibly need for any kind of electronic repair. And the most important one you can see here is this. This is a Torx T6 bit right here, and I'll just go ahead and tell you, when I installed the water block onto the other Titan, it actually had all Phillips head screws on the back of the PCB. So I thought that when I went to install the water block onto this card that it would also, since they're both EVGA cards, that they would both have Phillips head screws. But I was incorrect, and this particular card uses the T6 Torque screw to secure the air cooler onto the PCB. So yeah, it's nice to have a kit like this that you can open up and just grab whatever bit that you need whenever you need it, because you never know when you're diving into computer hardware what you're going to need until you need it, and then it's too late and you have to go to Home Depot or whatever. Moving right along, we have some Arctic Cooling MX4. This is my preferred thermal interface material. I love this stuff because it's one of the highest performing TIMs on the market, and it's also fully non-conductive. So when you're dealing with a GPU like this, where there's a lot of circuitry around the chip itself, you don't have to worry. You still don't want to go globbing it on there and spilling it, but if any of it does get anywhere you don't want it to be, it's not going to be a massive issue because this stuff is not conductive. Speaking of thermal interface material, I've also got my trusty Arcticlean kit. This is the removal kit for thermal interface material. The first bottle emulsifies and removes the thermal compound, the old thermal compound, and then the second bottle here prepares the surface of your new for your new installer application of thermal compounds. So this stuff is great. You can also use like 90% isopropyl alcohol. A lot of people just use that, and that's totally fine. But this stuff here is nice to have. It's not too expensive, and it's a two-step process, which ensures that your GPU is going to be fully cleaned and ready for new TIM installation. Inside the coffee filter here, I have my trusty TIM application tool, which is basically just an old credit card that I've cut up. I usually use the small piece here to initially spread the TIM around on the GPU, and then I use the large piece to scrape off the excess and really smooth out the application. I am a spreader. EK actually recommends that you just do like a star pattern on the GPU, and that's fine. I mean, any way you want to do it is fine. There are so many different ways that people swear by when it comes to installing thermal compound, and it's really just personal preference. I enjoy putting a thin layer across the entire GPU, but any way you want to do it is fine by me. Lastly here, you're probably wondering why I have a power supply sitting on the desk, and that is simple electric shock or static electricity 101. You want to always ground yourself when you are dealing with electronic components, so a plugged-in power supply is the simplest and easiest way to ground yourself. So I've got a power supply here. It is plugged into the wall, so just periodically whenever I'm touching or I'm going to touch the Titan, I'm going to touch the power supply just to keep myself grounded. So anyway, that's all the tools that I have here, and now I think we can go ahead and get started with the installation, I'm just going to clear out some space, and we're going to open up the FC Titan water block and just take a look at that and see what comes in the box, and yeah, so here we go. As you open up the block here, you can see it's basically the same exact packaging as they've had on their previous blocks that I've used. You've got a baggie of accessories here. There's a spacer for your fittings. There's a couple of stop fittings, a Allen key for those stop fittings, and a bunch of screws and plastic washers for installing the block onto the PCB. These are the thermal pads that I was talking about. You get two different sizes, which I don't really understand because they're both 1/2 millimeter thick, so it really doesn't matter. I don't think which one you put where, but they're labeled 1 and 2, and the ones, these strips here, are going to go on the memory chips, and then these, the large one, is going to be cut up for the VRMs. So yeah, we'll get to that later. Moving right along, we have our handy instruction little page here, and it's fairly detailed, step by step. It's got pictures, and you definitely want to just go over the even if you're watching this video to see step by step what to do. You always want to familiarize yourself with the instructions just to make sure that you're on the same page with EK. Now we open up into the second compartment of the box, and this is where the block is. And I'm just going to pull it out of the box here. And you can see it has some foam packaging around it to protect it during shipping, which is also a good thing. So if you look, as we look at the front of the block here, this is the part that you'll be able to see as it's attached to the video card. You can see that it has two G 1/4 fittings on the top and on the bottom. So they're just standard fittings that will screw into there. And you can see the flow of the water will be this way through the GPU and then past the VRMs. Anyway, let's open the block up and pull it out. I'll zoom in here and give you a closer look. I've just broken the seal now, so it's all or nothing at this point. All right, and I don't want to really get a bunch of fingerprints on the block here, so I'm just gonna set this aside here, and I'm gonna hold it by the edges, and I'm gonna bring you in closer here so you can really see the detail of the block. As I said, it's really quite pretty. And seeing coolant go through is always nice. That's why I love the plexiglass finish on these EK blocks. It's just aesthetically they really can't be beat. Although I do really like the what is it, the heat killer blocks. Those are really nice too, and as far as I know, they're going to be releasing a Titan block at some point, but EK beat everybody to market. I'll show you the back real quick. You definitely don't want to handle the back. You don't want to get any oils or fingerprints on the contact surfaces, but you can take a good close look there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the removal of the air cooler on the Titan, which I will admit it pains me to do because really this is such a gorgeous video card with the GeForce GTX logo lighting up. It really is a premium feeling product. And I really do hate to dismantle it, but in the name of performance, you got to do what you got to do. So anyway, when you read your EK instructions that I told you to read, make sure you do that. You will see that the very first step is actually to flip the card this way and remove two screws that are on the PCI slot. So Yeah, you need to remove those. And these just take a regular Phillips head screwdriver. Another important tip here while I'm talking about the screws is do not lose any of the screws. You're not going to be reinstalling these screws once the water block is on. You're actually not going to be reinstalling any of the screws once the water block is on. But if you ever need to put the stock cooler back on the card, say in the future you get a new card and you want to sell the old one, you need the screws to put it back on. If you have to send it back to EVGA or whoever, they're not going to accept it for RMA if it doesn't have the original screws. So anyway, I grounded myself here again, and I'm going to flip this over and we're going to get to the back of the PCB here. And I'm going to show you the screws that we need to remove next. I'm hoping that that's focused good, because this is kind of small to see. Now, as I said, all these screws that come off the back here were Phillips head screws on my other EVGA Titan. So don't assume that they're all going to be Phillips head just because they're the same manufacturer, because as you can see, these are the Torx head screws. So I'm going to start from left to right here, and it doesn't really matter which way you go, but that's just what I'm going to do. And I'm going to remove every single screw that's on the back here. Okay, sorry guys, I ran into some camera issues while I was unscrewing those screws. It decided to shut off on me, but that's okay. Like I said, just remove every single screw that's on the back of the PCB, including this last one that I'm pulling off here. This screw actually attaches the slot here, the PCI slot, to the PCB, so make sure you don't forget to remove that one. Now I'm going to give you a closer look at the card here, the back of the card, so you can see all the different screw locations that you need to remove. But you kind of want to just start with one side, usually this end here where the power connectors are, and just sort of start, wiggling it a little bit. Just bring it up gently. You don't want to snap it or anything. Just it'll eventually give, and then move your way up the PCB as it gives, and there it goes. So remember, real quickly here, remember that when you remove the PCB, it's going to still be connected to the stock cooler by your two power connectors that go to the fan and that LED light on the other side. I'm going to show you these just inside there. I don't know if you'll be able to see those. Can you see that? You can see the two wires that are connected to the PCB that go to the cooler. Now these are, in my experience with my other Titan, a bit of a pain to get off of here. So just bear with me while I try to pull these off. So anyway, there is the back side of the PCB, and there is the GK110 Uber chip right there, sort of in the middle, not quite in the middle, but it's amazing how light the PCB actually is once you remove the air cooler. So anyway, here we have the card here. I'm going to show you real quick a close-up of the PCB minus the air cooler. You can see, and this is digging into my hand here, but you can see all the memory chips around the GPU here. You got 6 gigabytes of memory on the Titan, which is a lot. You've also got your voltage regulators here and here, and all of those need thermal pads on them when you install the water block. So I'm going to bring out my ArctiClean that I told you about, thermal material remover, and we're going to try out these Q-tips like the EK instructions recommend. You're just going to put, a decent amount on the Q-tip, and then you're just going to gently dab at the GPU. So that's the first bottle down, and now we're going to move to the second bottle here, which will prepare the surface for new thermal interface material, and it says it purifies it, so I don't know, that's got to be good, right? And we're going to take our bottle here and we're going to put some more on a new Q-tip. And when you're done, you have a very mirror-like shine on. I'm going to see if I can see the camera in the die itself. Alright, so anyway, there are my thermal pads right there. And please make sure you verify with your instructions which pads go where, because that's a crucial step in this process. And yeah, so just have a look at your instructions and make sure that the pads go where they're supposed to go. Now, I'm looking at the instructions right now and can tell you for sure that these thin ones go on the memory chips and the big one here goes on the VRMs. So we're just going to take out our scissors. And this, guys, this does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look, you know, like it was laser cut by some robot. You just want to get a general size. You just want to make sure that each chip is fully covered, and then just cut them down to that size. Now, the memory chips are the same width basically as this strip, so all you have to do is just make them big enough to cover the chip. So I'm just going to cut them out here. Remember, there's 12 of these, so you need to cut 12 little sections for all of your memory chips. Alright, now as you can see, I have finished installing the thermal pads onto the memory modules, and now I'm going to move on to cutting and installing the thermal pads for the voltage regulators. Now, again, you use the large thermal pad provided by EK for that, and please check your instructions for the exact placement of these thermal pads. And I have now finished installing the thermal pad on the voltage regulators, and again I'm going to bring you in close to show you what that looks like. So here is all of the thermal pads installed on the PCB. You can see all 12 of the memory pads, as well as 5 pads on the voltage regulators. Here, 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 and a little one there. And now we come to the sort of the most well, no, actually we've got to put the thermal interface material on first. So I'm going to show you how I do that. And again, like I said, it makes absolutely no difference how your preferred application or what your preferred application is. Everybody has different ideas on which way is the best, and As I said before, I'm a spreader. I like to spread it. So this is just how I do it, but there's no real wrong way to do it other than using way too much, and I think that's probably the most common thing that happens with people when they are installing TIM, is that they install way too much. You really don't need much. I'm going to use basically a thin line down the side of the GPU here, and that's pretty much all you're going to need. And I start on the side because my method of spreading, I start on one side and I spread it across to the other side. Alright, and as you can see, that's pretty much a perfect spread right there. It's very thin. You can almost see through it to the die beneath, and that's pretty much what you want. We're going to grab our block here, and of course you want to make sure that it's in the right orientation for this step. And of course the connectors here go to the top of the card. Obviously you don't want to put them where it has to plug into the PCI slot. So anyway, we're going to carefully line up the screw holes, and you can see the standoffs here on the block. There's standoffs where the screw holes are on the PCB, and we're going to line those up with those holes. And you kind of have to get down and look from the side to do this, because obviously you can't see through the block. So you'd want to just line up one hole and then another, and just make sure that it's straight on there, and then just set it down. You don't want to be moving the block around or doing anything like that, because you put your thermal interface material on there, and you don't want to smear it around and risk getting a poor contact. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use like a paper towel here to keep from getting fingerprints on the block. And you're basically just going to flip the whole thing over, and this is where it gets a little bit difficult. So bear with me here. I'm just going to flip this whole thing over just like that. And you don't want to, it's hard because you can't really grab, there's not much that you can grab. So I'm just going to pull that out like that. And then once you get it flipped over like this, you can better line up the screw holes, because you can now see where they are. And like I said, you want to make very small adjustments to the PCB so you don't mess up your thermal pads and your thermal compound. And it looks like I've got it pretty much perfectly aligned here, just a minor adjustment there. And that's that. So now all you have to do is screw in your screws that EK has provided in the little baggie right here. You're not going to use 19 screws like you did when you removed the stock cooler, because the the water block only comes to here on the card, and so you're only going to be screwing in from here down. And obviously not all the screws actually have a place to screw into on the water block, so you want to be careful and only obviously try to screw the screws in where there is threads for them to go. Another important tip is to make sure that you put a plastic washer on each and every screw that goes into the PCB. This, of course, is to prevent shorting. And one final piece of info here: one screw that comes with the EK block is longer than the rest. Only one, and I know you're not going to be able to probably see that very well, but one screw is longer, and that screw is the one that goes on the PCI slot, or the bracket here at the end. So you want to set that one aside and use that one last. Now, as we get to this last screw here, I didn't mention this before, but you really don't need to use much force when screwing these screws in. I mean, you're not trying to hold together Noah's Ark or anything. They don't need to be like, don't muscle up on them. The bare die of the GK110 is susceptible to cracking, according to the EK instruction guide. So the thought of cracking that die just terrifies me. So, and it should terrify you. So you want to make sure that they're tight, but they don't have to be Superman tight. Just when you feel resistance, just give it a little bit more of a turn, and that's really it. That's all you need. Now, as I mentioned before, this long screw that you have, there's only one of them, is used to secure the bracket here to the PCB. And what you do with it is you use a plastic washer, like always, but you also need to use this small M3 nut. Okay, and it comes with the block, and it's the only nut in the baggie. So you secure it by putting the screw through the hole here, and this is the one on the end of the card at the bracket there. And it's going to be a little bit out of place. You're going to have to kind of push the PCB back into place there. And it just goes right through, and then you secure the nut to the other side with your thumb, with a finger, or however you want to do it. But the screw obviously is going to screw into that nut, so you just hold it there with your fingers. And it will go in, and then it will tighten, and then that's it. At this point, you have pretty much installed your FC Titan onto your GTX Titan video card. One last tip for the screws: make sure when you're putting in the 4 screws that secure the actual GPU that you use a cross pattern when screwing that in. But other than that, we're pretty much done. We're ready to go ahead and flip this card over and take a look at the finished product. And there it is. That is the FC Titan installed onto an EVGA superclocked GeForce GTX Titan. Now, even though I tried to take precautions against it, I did get a little bit of a fingerprint here on my plexi, which of course won't do. So I've got to remove that real quick. But other than that, I'd say that this installation went fairly smoothly, and hopefully that will answer any questions that you may have about installing not just this particular water block, but any water block onto a video card. I'm just going to bring you in closer for a close look, and you can see the finished product here. And as you know, aesthetically, water blocks always look great on video cards, in my opinion, especially these plexi nickel blocks that just really add something to most cards. But as I said, I also really love that stock cooler on the Titan. So, you know, I'm kind of torn. Does it look great? Yes. But, you know, the Titan looks great too just by itself. So, you know, you can judge for yourself what you think.